Welcome back to Unveiling the Covenants, exploring the mysteries of the love of the Father in Scripture. We're going through the Exodus narrative. Now, as I've mentioned in the past episode, we're going to zoom through the Exodus now because a lot of the main stories that set up particular things have taken place. And we're going to go through some laws, but I want to jump ahead here because up to this point, after the Sinai event proper, Israel has been given law after law after law. These are covenant laws, family laws for Israel, and culminating with the Sabbath law. So you've got the depiction of the building of the tabernacle, the artists being conscripted for the sake of that building, the ordination of the people into a priesthood. And so all of that language has been set up. You've got now covenant that has sacrifice, that has liturgy, and that has a temple, or in this case, a tabernacle, the desert tabernacle. That's an important locus of Israel's covenant life in the desert. But I want us to pay attention particularly to the last facet of this, which is chapter 31, verse 12. The Sabbath law. And the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the sons of Israel, you shall keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath, because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." Now, it's tough for us to understand this, but to this very day, Orthodox Jews, Hasidic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, they adhere to this. They believe that the Sabbath command and the command of the feast days are so crucial that even to this day, if you take a look at the nation of Israel, for example, on those days, they literally cease to work. They cease to do anything that constitutes manual labor. Now, they can be a little pedantic about it. They can be a little myopic about how they apply it, and very fastidious, but regardless of the situation, they observe the Sabbath. Because the Hebrew word Shabbat, Shavah, means to hallow oneself. The belief is that on the Sabbath, God was lifting up every member of the covenant to the enjoyment of divine life. And that's why you don't work. Because if God himself rests on the Sabbath, you join him in rest on the Sabbath. So that as the beginning of the week starts again, you join God in his work of recreation. Now, I'm going to jump ahead here. What Christ achieves in making Sunday the new Sabbath is making the day of recreation the new beginning of covenant life. And so the old covenant Sabbath ends creation. The new covenant Sabbath begins creation anew. That's why the day of the resurrection, called the Lord's Day, Sunday, is the day that Christians ordain and honor and appreciate and live and cherish as the day that they commune with the Lord, on quite literally the Lord's Day, sanctified unto the Lord. And that's why every Sunday is known as a day that is hallowed unto God. Now, jumping ahead here. 6 days shall work be done. The 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. And so as they observe it, they become holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. And therefore the sons of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. Like I said, the Jewish people take this very seriously. We Christians would do well to take the chiding of God here, to hearken to his words for the sake of honoring the Sabbath. It is a sign forever between me and the sons of Israel that in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. And then you get the tables of the covenant. And he gave to Moses, when he had made an end of speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the covenant. Tables or tablets of stone written with the finger of God. Because it starts with the people saying, yes, we will be the children of God, because God offers the covenant and says, if you will be my people, I will be your God. And so they say yes. And so Moses goes up on behalf of the people as a mediator, kind of lawyer, so to speak. And he receives from God the legal stipulations of this new family bond. Think of this as an adoption quite literally. That the parent initiates the terms of the adoption. The child accepts the terms of the adoption if they are of age, and in this case they are. And so there's a mutual giving. Sometimes the child is unable to do so, and so someone does the response in their stead. In America, we know this full well. It's either the state that does the response or the closest living kin that do the response. But regardless of the situation, a response is made. The child makes an acceptance of the terms of adoption. And so now that the child has accepted, the family family rules are given. In order to be part of our family, these are the ways in which we live family life. And so the child who has said, I will be your child, has also said, therefore, I will accept all of the family laws, all of the family bonds, all of the family rules, regulations, rituals. And so the parent now puts down those terms on paper. In the American context, in God's case, he puts it down on stone, that the binding reality is so crucial that it has to be put down on tablets of stone. And so clearly when Moses comes down with the 2 tablets of stone, it becomes abundant that the people of Israel are ready to receive it. No, this is what happens. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, because for 40 days he was up there, and they will be holding lightning and fire and thunder coming down from the sky for all those 40 days. At the lowest level, they believed that Moses had died. At the highest level, they probably believed that Moses had deserted them, abandoned them, and that he was going to stay with God. 40 days after escaping slavery, and they're just staying there in the wilderness. One could almost understand the sentiment. One cannot excuse the sentiment, though, because this is what happens. The people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, Up, make us gods, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Now, look at the language. Up, make us gods. This isn't a request. This is a sort of mandate. Why are they going to Aaron? Well, number one, Aaron is a kind of ad hoc leader in Moses' absence. That's the first thing. But the second thing, perhaps more importantly, is this gives us an indicator as to what Aaron might have been doing in Egypt. The fact that everyone congregated around Aaron shows, to make of this request to Aaron, shows that his job in Egypt probably involved smelting metals for the sake of the building of idols, which is not unthinkable. It was one of the main commerce trades of Egypt. And so anyone who was able to do this made a bit of a living for themselves, a lucrative living, mind you. So we don't know if Aaron was actually wealthy, but we do know for sure he had the skill to do so, and he did so quickly, which means he was a bit of an expert in doing so. Because immediately upon the mandate, by the way, just some context, Aaron was foolhardy. He should never have done this. But imagine the entirety of the nation of Israel pressing down on him, saying, do this for us. This is the language of mandate. Do this. Up, now, do this. We're not taking no for an answer. Aaron most probably feared for his death. And Moses, who was absent, was not able to stand in Aaron's stead in this regard and put a stop to this nonsense. And so Aaron said to them, immediately he knew what to do. Take off the rings of gold which are in the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me. And so all the people took off the rings of gold which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Where did they get these rings of gold? Remember, when they were leaving Egypt, the Egyptians gave them wealth and treasure and said, go on your way. We wish you well. We want nothing to do with you. The gold of Egypt becomes the gold that's turned into the idol of Egypt that the people of God wind up worshipping. There's a bit of a lesson here in terms of being careful that the blessings of the world don't become the idols that we worship. That's exactly what happens with the Israelites. They're going back to what was familiar, because he received the gold at their hand, and what does he do? He fashioned it with a graving tool and made a molten calf, and they said, now the language in the Hebrew is actually plural. These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. There's a bit of a commentary here. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28, there is a king that is elected by God, and he takes over the northern tribes of Israel, the 10 northern tribes of Israel. The southern 2 tribes, effectively Judah, the tribe of Judah, some Benjaminites stay there, but Levi, they stay in the south. And so the 10 tribes, so really 3 tribes in the south, the 10 tribes of the north, they band with Jeroboam. The southern tribes band with Rehoboam, who is a son of Solomon, but he's proven himself to be a bad king, and that's why the kingdom splits. Now, why am I giving you this history? We'll get there in a bit, but the reason for this history is because as soon as Jeroboam becomes king of the northern tribes, the first thing he wants to do is to make sure that the people no longer go back to Judah. They no longer go back to David's kingdom. Now, why would they go back? To worship. Because there's only one location that you can offer sacrifices to Yahweh, and that is at the temple. And so in order to prevent that from happening, Jeroboam decided to elect a different god or different gods for the worship of Israel, the Israel that he was ruling. And so he creates 2 molten calves. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28, 2 molten calves are made. One at the north of Israel, one at the south of Israel, to make sure that the Israelites could go to both places, but never ever going back to the temple, and therefore never going back to David's God. This event in Exodus probably harkens to that reality, that Aaron probably made 2 calves. Now, regardless of the situation, why golden calves? Because as I mentioned in the story of the plagues, the Egyptians worshipped idols that were in the shape of animals, and they deified them. Apis, who took the form of a bull or a calf, was the idol of fertility. The great concern of Israel right now is that they will die. The great concern of Israel is that without a God to watch over them, they as a people will perish. And so their survival instinct kicks in, but they want to exercise it in a sinful manner. So what do? Well, they effectively say to God, we don't want you. We want the idols that we were familiar with. And so Apis is the idol of fertility. And based on historical records, as we will talk about in a little bit, the way in which Apis was worshipped was by means of sexual debauchery. Fill in the gaps however you will. But what Moses came down from the mountain to see was nothing short of sinful. It was a conglomerate sin of the entirety of the nation of Israel in worship of this idol of fertility, because the belief was if you did everything this idol wanted, your species would continue, your bloodline would continue, you would have children, and so fertility would flourish. And so even if everything else fails, your people would continue. That's why they worshipped Apis. And so these are your gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And what does he do? He builds an altar immediately. And then he makes a proclamation. Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. And now that title Adonai is being attributed to this bull, Apis. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. These are the structures of how they ought to worship God. They're taking what God had handed down to them by Moses, and now they're using it for the sake of sinful idolatrous worship. It's already sinful enough that they're worshiping the idol, but they're using the structures of the worship of God for the sake of worshiping these idols. And so you're going to see that the language here takes on a form of infidelity. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. That word is tricky to translate, but like I've mentioned, think sexual debauchery at perhaps a kind of relatively reasonable understanding of the text. And so as they are doing this, the Lord then speaks to Moses. Go down. Your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly of the way which I commanded them. They've made for themselves a molten calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it, saying, These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So God is privy to all of this. And the Lord said to Moses, I've seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now, why stiff-necked? Because they've been in slavery for so long in Egypt. These are the ways they know, and they're proving difficult to convert. And now, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, but of you I will make a great nation. So now God is saying, you know what? I'm going to wipe them all out, and I will raise in you, Moses, a holy nation. You personally. Your children shall be made a holy nation. They will be my new people. Continuation from Abraham. You, Moses, will continue because you have been faithful. Because even Aaron has failed. And if Aaron has failed, you can bet that Miriam has failed as well. What does Moses do? He stands in the stead of the people. He begs the Lord, O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought forth out of the land of Egypt? And so what does he say? Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. This language of remembrance of the covenant, which you and I can use as an instrument of prayer, because God doesn't need reminders. We do of the faithfulness of God. And you said to them, I'll multiply your descendants. And so what does it say? The Lord repented of the evil which he taught to do to his people. It's not that the Lord changed his mind. It is that Moses' intercession actually achieved something at the level of instrumental causality. And that's crucial. So what does Moses do? Well, he comes down as a lawyer and he brings what's known as a covenant lawsuit on the people. Moses turned, went down from the mountain, and when Joshua heard the noise of the people, because Joshua was with Moses, he said to Moses, there's a noise of war in the camp. But Moses said, that's not the sound of shouting for victory, or the sound of defeat. It's the sound of singing that I hear. And they came near the camp, they saw the calf, and they saw the dancing. and Moses' anger burned hot. And so essentially he cast down the stone tablets. Now you might be thinking, what right does he have to do that? God gave it to him. Well, it was a sign. This was typically what was done. If covenant has been violated, the document or manifestation of the terms of covenant had to be shattered, because that's effectively what has been shattered. And so the stone tablets were shattered on the ground as a sign. I bring this lawsuit against you. In short, this is an activity of a lawyer bringing a lawsuit against them. In short, they have been served, as the language in the US would have it today. And so then Moses goes to Aaron. By the way, if anyone tells you that the Bible is an overtly serious book, you need to learn how to look for the humor. This is one of my favorite bits of humor. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you've brought a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot, for they said to me, make us gods who shall go before us." So he's blaming the people. Again, if you can imagine this is exactly what happened in the garden. Moses is standing in the stead of God. He comes down to the new Eden, which is the foot of Sinai. He goes directly to the new Adam. In this case, it's supposed to be Aaron, sort of Moses as well. But Moses stands more in the stead of God than he does in the stead of Adam. And so Aaron is the new high priest. Aaron is the new priest of Israel. And so he is, in this case, the new Adam. And in this case, Miriam sort of stands as the new Eve. She's sort of quiet here. She doesn't do anything. But look at this. Aaron, the new Adam, says, "Don't look at me. These people, they made me do it." But look at his excuse. "And I said to them, let any who have gold take it off. And so they gave it to me. And I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Not my fault. I threw the gold in the fire, and the calf came out. It was a miracle. I didn't do it." It's easily one of the dumbest lines in all of Scripture. Mind you, this is a grown man who's now functioning as a kind of priest over Israel, who's the second in command over all of Israel in terms of covenant mediatorship. This is the best line he can come up with, and yet that is the line he gives. And so what does Moses do? He made sure the line made it into Scripture. Because you can imagine, after the event died out, Moses confronted Aaron and said, "That was a nonsensical line that you pulled. There's no way you thought I would believe it." And Aaron probably said, "Yeah, in the heat of the moment I was nervous, but who's going to know? Let's just forget it and move on." And so Moses probably thought to himself, everyone. I'm going to make sure everyone knows. And what does he do? He puts it in the book that we read to this day, knowing that this is the word of God. And so it would last until the end of time. And so until the end of time, people are going to know that this great high priest of Israel did this dumb thing and said this dumb sentence as his excuse. So let me tell you right now, the Bible has plenty of humor if you know where to look for it. Now, why is this also crucial? Because it's akin to what Adam does in blaming Eve. Aaron blames the people who is, if he is high priest, he acts in the stead of the bridegroom. And so the people are the bride of God, the bride of Yahweh. And so Aaron is blaming the bride as effectively what Adam did. He blamed his bride. And so God then pronounced curses upon Satan, upon Eve, and upon Adam. And that's the exact same thing that's going to happen. Moses saw the people, that they had broken loose, and he stood at the gate of the camp, and he says, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." All the sons of Levi go to him. And then he tells them, slay them. Now, this symbol of death is the curse brought upon not just Satan, that the cessation of idolatry is happening now, but also upon the people, that their blood is going to be shed. Today, and so the sons of Levi did according to the word of the Lord, and that day about 3,000 people fell, 3,000 men fell, not counting women who were involved in this as well. And this is to prove a point, that idolatry must be paid for in bloodshed. It was that serious at the time. And so Moses said, "Today you have ordained yourselves by the blood of the sacrifice, and by their willingness to shed the blood of, in this case, those who have violated the covenant terms. They have ordained themselves." And so this is liturgical language, that the Levites have now consecrated themselves, set themselves apart for priestly service, for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, that he may bestow a blessing upon you this day. And so Moses then says to the people, so the people are encountering the curse of death, but more than that, he now curses them. "You've sinned a great sin, but I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for you." And so what is the curse then? Israel, the entire nation, was made to be a kingdom of priests. Every husband, every father was to be priest over his house. Every father would ordain his son and his sons as priests. Every son and father would be high priests of their domestic household. There would be one high priest of the entire nation, the entire covenant, per generation. And so Aaron would have functioned as high priest over the entire generation, and everyone would have been priests. Fathers would have been high priests over their household, and so everyone would have been able to offer sacrifice to God in worship of the Lord our God. Now, a punishment is going to ensue. The entire book of Deuteronomy is about this punishment. And so I'm going to jump ahead here. The entire book of Deuteronomy is the Deuteronomos, the second law, where Israel is now given a socio-political document. Frankly, the entire book of Deuteronomy is a political document. It teaches you how to govern yourself as a political populace while being subservient to a liturgical order. It's different, and Leviticus, therefore, is a book entirely about the ordaining of the Levites into the priesthood. And that's why it's a book full of stipulations about blood sacrifice, about purity, about ritual purification, because the Levites have to honor this for the sake of God and the people, and the Deuteronomy, the Deuteronomic people, had to honor this for the sake of living faithfully as much they can now that they have been laicized as a people. They can't be a kingdom of priests anymore. They've all been laicized. Only the Levites will be able to function as priests in the stead or in the place and in the service of the Lord our God. And that's the massive punishment. This was a removal of a massive blessing, and the people feel it. And this will continue on all the way until Christ. There will not be a reversal of this model. The father-son priesthood now gives way to the Levitical ministerial priesthood. When Christ comes along, he will honor both. That he will reestablish the father-son priesthood so that now all people are baptized into the role of priesthood. Everyone, if you're baptized, you're a priest, a common priest, because the father-son priesthood has been reestablished. And that's why, rightly, this reestablishment means husbands and fathers, you are the high priests of your household. Your family altars become the altar of your sacrifice. Your children become your Israel. Your bride becomes your Levite. Everyone functions in the service of liturgical worship to the Lord. And sure, you don't offer the Eucharist at home, but everything in your life, including the ordering of prayer, is a Eucharistic sacrifice. Your job primarily is to be high priest of your household. You are the first line of spiritual warfare and defense. And if you fall, my friends, rise up, my brothers, my fathers, rise up. Because where Aaron failed, God still forgave and he rose up. The Levites rose up where Israel failed. You don't have to worry. Your Father will forgive you, but he's also called you to battle, and you do battle by means of prayer and spiritual warfare, and your bride is your assistant in that regard. And so this is the intercession Moses prays. And thank the Lord that he didn't wipe out all of Israel, because he renews the covenant in chapter 34. He makes a covenant before all the people that he will do marvels and protect them. Do what I command you this day, and I will drive out before you all of the evil of the people that come before you. If they will you harm, I will be your God. You will be my people. And so Moses, having communed before God, comes down, and his face is reflective with the glory of God, the shining face of Moses. And then again, the Sabbath regulations are reestablished, and now a tabernacle has been built, and so an ark needs to be made to contain the symbols of the covenant, so that the people will have a locus of worship. Because even though the people sinned, God still wants to be close to them. And so by the time we get to chapter 37, 38, we're going to see these different representations that find manifestation in the Catholic Church. But we're in salvation history, so I'm not going to go into great detail chapter by chapter. What I do want to establish is, in chapter 40, the tabernacle is erected because the work has been accomplished at the end of chapter 39. And so the cloud of God, the glory of God, comes to descend upon the presence of the people of Israel. And it's so powerful that if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not go onward. Throughout all their journeys, the cloud of God was there. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And whenever God was there, not even Moses was able to enter to commune with God. God's presence is with us. God's presence is with you in your house. Let his Shekinah, his glory, come upon your house right now. And mind you, we won't behold God's glory until the beatific vision. But let God's presence come upon your house right now. You husbands, you fathers. And in fact, you boys who are listening to this, every one of you who are men in your household, it is your job to be the mediator of God's presence in the household. Brides and daughters, you are meant to assist in that role. Never take that lightly. Your household is to be primarily liturgical and covenantal first, and everything else second. And if we can reestablish that in our household, we will see chains broken. We will see lives restored. We will see lives transformed, because God will be in our midst, and He will be the one that restores us to our Father-Son priesthood and our ministerial priesthood. He will be the one to let His presence dwell among us. And He will be the one to preserve the sainthood of our entire family. And so we've ended the book of Leviticus. We've ended the book of Exodus. I'm going to jump ahead. I'm not going to talk about Leviticus or Deuteronomy very much. All I'm going to do is go straight to Joshua and give you a precursor, if you will, to what happens at the book of Joshua. Because now we move forward into the next phase. Salvation history is still being written out, and it's being written out in your life and my life. But like I've mentioned, Leviticus is entirely about the ordaining of the Levites into priesthood. So if you read Leviticus, skim it. Skim the entire book. Just briefly flip through the entire book. You don't have to internalize everything. There are signs and symbols and rituals and observances of the priests, who are the Levites, including Aaron. And then Deuteronomy, if you want to read it, skim it as well. It's 3 sermons given by Moses for the sake of the socio-political governance of the people of Israel in faith in God. Thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, I'm Marcus Peter.